Welcome to a story where love was never pure. In the shadows of unmet needs, lust took root, growing wild, unchecked, until it consumed everything in its path. A young woman torn between the steady warmth of a man who saved her, and the fiery temptation of a younger soul desperate for more than love. In this tale, passion is both salvation and damnation. Part 1, Broken Wings, Berlin, late winter. The cold wind howled through the ancient streets, carrying with it flurries of snow like drifting ghosts. Emily, 25 years old, stepped out of the train station, clutching her worn suitcase tightly to her chest. Inside her, there was nothing left but emptiness. Once, she had believed she had everything. Love, faith, a wedding plan down to the last flower. Until she caught Daniel, her fiancé, wrapped around another woman just a week before their vows. Her dreams shattered like fragile glass, and something deep within her, a fierce, aching hunger for connection, for love, for belonging, withered in silence. Emily no longer cried. She no longer raged. She simply moved forward, a hollow figure in the snowfall. The taxi wound its way through the narrow, mist-shrouded streets toward von Altsberg Manor, her new workplace. The manor loomed like a sleeping beast, its windows dark, its ancient stones covered in creeping frost. Emily hesitated before stepping out. The cold bit into her skin. The heavy door creaked open. A man stepped out, his figure half lost in the mist. Richard, 47 years old, the caretaker of the estate. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark gray coat blending into the twilight. His eyes were deep-set, a mirror to sorrows he had long since learned not to show. "Welcome, Miss Emily," Richard said in a low, calm voice, extending his gloved hand. Emily accepted it. The moment their hands touched, a spark, sudden and electric, jolted through her. A strange heat bloomed across her palm, spreading up her arm, warming places inside her she had forgotten could be warm. She quickly withdrew, hiding her confusion behind a tight smile. Inside, the manor was steeped in half-light. Long hallways stretched into shadows. The stone floors echoed beneath their footsteps. An elderly woman approached, Martha, the 60-year-old cook, with a kindly smile. "Welcome, dear." "You'll get used to the quiet," Martha said warmly. She showed Emily around. The kitchen downstairs. The library, her primary responsibility. The living quarters above, occupied only by Richard, Martha, and now Emily. Emily's room was tucked under the attic beams, small, sparse, a single window gazing out onto skeletal winter woods. She placed her suitcase down inside. The silence pressed against her, thick and heavy. That night, curled under coarse blankets, Emily stared at the cracked ceiling, feeling the memories throb behind her closed eyelids. She had fled across the ocean to escape betrayal. But how could she outrun the ache lodged deep inside? A shiver passed through her, but not entirely from the cold. Somewhere within, a hidden ember still smoldered. A desperate, stubborn hunger to be touched, to be seen, to be loved. She was terrified that one day, that hunger would consume her entirely. Outside her window, snowflakes fell in endless silence, burying the world, burying her broken wings. Part 2, Silent Walls. The days at von Altsberg Manor unfurled slowly, wrapped in the heavy silence of ancient stones and endless corridors. Each morning, Emily found herself swallowed by the dusty expanse of the library, her delicate frame dwarfed by towering shelves and forgotten tomes. It was there, between the scent of old paper and the creak of ancient wood, that she often saw him. Richard, 47 years old, sleeves rolled up, hauling firewood, repairing broken fixtures, moving with a quiet power that was strangely hypnotic. His muscles, hardened by years of work rather than vanity, flexed beneath the fabric of his shirt. Every movement was purposeful, controlled, a symphony of restrained strength. Emily found herself watching, heart beating in erratic rhythm. A strange heat blooming low in her belly. Something primal and unsettling awakening within her. She tried to tear her gaze away, but the image of him, all strength, all quiet assurance, seared itself into her mind like a forbidden brand. At dinner, Richard's quiet gestures unsettled her further. Passing her bread with a barely there smile, the brush of his hand against hers when handing over a dish. Each touch, accidental, innocent, left her breathless. The walls of the manor seemed to lean in closer each night, heavy with words unsaid. That night, curled under thick blankets, Emily tossed and turned as the winter storm howled outside. The branches scraped against her window like skeletal fingers. She shut her eyes. But Richard's face, those steady hands, that grave smile, the quiet command in his every gesture haunted her. A molten ache coiled deep inside her, insistent and shameful. Without thinking, her fingers trailed down her body, seeking the heat that pooled between her thighs. Desperate to soothe the burning emptiness he had unknowingly ignited. Her breaths came faster, shallow, her body trembling with each stroke, until the tension broke, and for a fleeting moment, Emily floated free, weightless, lost, utterly alone. When it was over, she curled into herself, ashamed, yet oddly more alive than she had felt in months. Outside, the snow kept falling, and the walls of the manor kept their silent vigil. Part 3. Gentle Hands. The manor's walls seemed to breathe, whispering secrets only Emily could hear. Each passing day, the air between her and Richard grew heavier, thicker, charged with something neither dared to name. It began subtly. One morning, in the dusty quiet of the library, as Emily stacked books on trembling ladders, Richard's voice floated up from below, low and almost playful. "If you ever need a hand, Miss Emily, I'm always willing to help, even with the harder tasks." She glanced down. The way he was looking at her, steady, unwavering, made her heart clench painfully. There was something in his voice, something dark and warm that slipped under her skin. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the heavy tome. Later that afternoon, in the skeletal remains of the winter garden, Emily wandered among the withered rosebush. A cold wind tugged at her coat. She shivered. Suddenly, Richard was there, close enough that she felt the brush of his coat against her arm. He leaned in, his breath stirring the loose strands of her hair as he murmured, "It's far too easy to be swallowed by loneliness in a place like this. Lucky for us, warmth is something we can share." Emily froze. The words, soft, almost innocent, wrapped around her like a velvet rope. She dared not turn her head. She was sure that if she met his gaze now, everything would unravel. In the evening, the kitchen was bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp. Emily sat peeling apples, the blade flashing dully in the half-light. Richard came behind her, placing a hand lightly on the back of her chair. He leaned down, so close his breath caressed her ear. "Careful, Emily," he whispered. "Things as delicate as you bruise so easily, but sometimes a little hurt can be delicious." The knife slipped in her hand. Not enough to cut, but enough for her to gasp and glance up at him with wide, burning eyes. She found herself breathing too fast. The kitchen suddenly much too warm. That night, alone beneath heavy blankets, Emily could not sleep. The darkness pressed against her skin. She could still feel the ghost of his breath on her neck, the velvet trap of his words tightening around her soul. Her hand slipped under the covers, moving almost of its own accord. Fingertips trailed lower, seeking the heap that had built, relentless and aching. In the stillness, Emily surrendered to the longing he had kindled inside her. Whispering his name, broken, needy, into the silent darkness, Richard ... Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, Emily burned. Part 4. Storm at midnight. The storm broke over Berlin like a beast unleashed. Winds howled against the ancient walls of von Eltzberg Manor. Snow slammed into the windows and the lights flickered, then died. Emily stood frozen in her tiny attic room, clutching her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The darkness pressed against the walls, heavy, suffocating. A knock at her door, Richard's voice, low but steady. "Come downstairs, Emily. We'll light the fire. It's warmer together." Something in his voice sent a tremor through her. In the grand hall, Richard worked by candlelight, stacking logs into the massive stone fireplace. Flames roared to life, casting golden light and deep shadows across the room. Emily sat cross-legged on the rug, wrapped in a thick blanket. Richard joined her, so close their shoulders brushed. For a long moment, neither spoke. The crackle of the fire filled the silence, and outside, the storm raged like a living thing. Richard's voice finally broke the silence, roughened by something raw. "There was a time. I thought I'd never feel warmth again. Never want it again." Emily turned her face toward him, her heart hammering. His hand found hers under the blanket, not by accident this time, and squeezed gently. She didn't pull away. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her temple. "May I touch you, Emily? Just once, ... And if you ask me to stop, I will." His voice was low, reverent, as if he were asking for something sacred. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the war inside her. Duty, fear, loneliness, hunger. All collapsed into a single, aching yes. When she opened them, she found him waiting. Eyes dark, patient, desperate, and then he kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was hunger, it was thirst, it was two broken souls crashing together in the storm. Emily clutched at his coat, dragging him closer. Richard wrapped her in his arms, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other tracing the curve of her waist. Outside, the blizzard howled. Inside, they were lost in a fire of their own making. Part 5. First night. The door clicked shut behind them. For a moment, the only sounds were their breathing, ragged and heavy, and the crackling fire. Richard stood before her, his chest heaving. Emily, heart pounding against her ribs, felt the air thicken around them, heavy, charged, trembling with things unspoken. He stepped closer, slowly, so slowly, as if afraid that even a whisper might shatter the fragile thread between them. His hand reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. She shivered at the gentlest touch, and when his fingers trailed down her cheek to her jaw, she found herself leaning into him without even thinking. Richard cupped her face, searching her eyes, asking without words, "Are you sure?" Emily couldn't speak. Instead, she tilted her chin up, closed the distance between them, and pressed her lips to his. The first kiss was feather light, barely a breath, testing, tasting, two lost souls colliding in a silence louder than any scream. Emily felt his lips tremble against hers. Richard broke the kiss first, forehead resting against hers, breathing hard. "If you want me to stop ... double quotes," he rasped. Emily answered by pulling him back down, this time kissing him deeper, her fingers tangling desperately in his hair, and then the dam broke. Their bodies collided with a violence born not of anger, but of unbearable need. Hands tore at clothing, buttons popping, sweaters yanked away. Their mouths fought for dominance, biting, gasping, devouring. When Emily's back hit the bed, she barely registered how they had moved. All she knew was the weight of him above her, the heat of his skin branding hers wherever they touched. Richard paused again, trembling with restraint. He kissed her throat, the hollow between her collarbones, the soft swell of her breasts. Every kiss burned like a brand. Emily arched against him, moaning softly, her body begging for more even as her mind whirled. When he finally entered her, it was not gentle, it was fierce, claiming. She cried out, clutching his shoulders, feeling herself split open, not just her body, but her very soul. They moved together, rough and wild. Months, years of loneliness and longing exploding between them. The first time left them both gasping, shivering, barely able to think. But it wasn't enough. Richard kissed her again, harder, his body already stirring back to life. The second time was faster, almost frantic. Emily, straddling him, rode out wave after wave of shuddering pleasure, until she collapsed onto his chest, sobbing his name. And later, when the storm outside softened to a mournful whisper, they found each other again, Slow, tender, aching, making love not as strangers anymore, but as two souls who had finally found home. Part 6, Fragile Morning. The first light of morning seeped into the room, painting soft gold across the tangled sheets. Emily stirred against Richard's chest, every muscle deliciously sore, a tender reminder of all they had shared. She stayed still for a long while, feeling his warmth, the strong beat of his heart under her palm, the sweet ache between her thighs. For the first time in years, her body felt right, satisfied, complete. Richard shifted slightly, brushing a kiss to her hair. "Morning, love," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. Emily buried her burning face against his chest. She couldn't meet his eyes yet, couldn't quite believe what had happened between them. Richard chuckled low in his throat, pulling her tighter. "You're not getting away from me now," he teased. Emily laughed shakily, but there was a tight knot forming in her chest, a cold, creeping fear. She lifted her head, searching his face. Richard ... "What happens now?" He looked at her for a long moment, then cupped her face in his large, calloused hands. "Now," he said softly, "I find a way to make this right. No more hiding, no more secrets. No one will ever have the right to look down on you." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "But what if they don't understand?" she whispered. "The age difference, me working here ... Richard shook his head, his gaze fierce and unyielding. "I don't give a damn what they think. I want you, Emily. I'll find a way to make you mine properly." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Marry me if that's what it takes. Leave this place with me. Whatever you want, whatever it takes, I will protect you." Emily choked on a sob, overwhelmed by the tenderness in his voice. She wrapped her arms around him tightly, clinging to the only thing that felt certain in her world now. Him. Later, at breakfast, they moved around each other shyly. Burnt toast, spilled tea, stolen glances. Before Richard left to check the storm damage, he caught Emily by the wrist, pulling her into one last, searing kiss. "We're in this together," he whispered against her lips. "Don't ever doubt that." But as he stepped out into the cold, Emily couldn't shake the tiny seed of fear taking root deep in her chest. The world outside was bigger, colder, harsher than the warmth of his promises. And she knew ... fragile things could be broken far too easily. Part 7, First Doubts. The days after the storm passed in a haze of restless silence. Richard was gone from dawn till nightfall, checking damages, meeting contractors. Emily spent her hours wandering the sprawling, half-deserted estate, accompanied only by her spiraling doubts. The memory of their night together still clung to her skin, warm, tingling, but fear gnawed at her heart. What if it had meant more to her than to him? What if reality, cold and unrelenting, would tear them apart? On the third afternoon, a distant engine roared down the gravel drive. Emily was outside, tending the battered garden. She turned, shading her eyes, and saw a jeep skid to a halt. A tall man jumped out, dark hair messy from the drive, worn jeans, boots scuffed by long roads, a cocky, easy swagger that spoke of cities and trouble. And when his eyes found her, bright, piercing, his grin widened. "You must be Emily," he said. "I'm Liam, Richard's son." Emily's heart skipped. Richard's son. The words settled into her chest with an odd weight. Liam sauntered closer, casual but purposeful. There was something wild about him, something untamed, sharp around the edges. He stuck out his hand, palm rough and calloused. Emily shook it, hesitantly. The contact was brief, but something electric ran up her spine. Liam's thumb brushed hers, a touch too deliberate to be innocent, before he released her hand with a smirk. Emily stepped back, unsettled. "Dad told me someone new was working around here," Liam said, voice light. "Guess he didn't mention you're this pretty." Emily laughed awkwardly, looking down at her boots. "I'm just helping out," she murmured. "Lucky us," Liam drawled. The way he looked at her, frank, appraising, almost predatory, made Emily's skin prickle. She glanced around for Richard. But he was still gone. For the first time since arriving here, Emily felt a twinge of fear, and a deeper, more dangerous flicker of something else, something she dared not name. Part 8. Seeds of Temptation. The days slid into a strange, simmering rhythm. Richard remained busy, too busy, and Emily found herself spending more and more time crossing paths with Liam. At first, it was accidental, a nod in the hallway, a shared glance over breakfast. But soon it wasn't. Liam was always there, leaning casually against doorways, offering her teasing smiles, finding excuses to bump into her. Once, when she reached for a teacup in the kitchen, his hand brushed hers, lingering just a second too long. The jolt that raced up her arm left Emily breathless. Liam just smiled, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. Another afternoon, while she struggled to carry a heavy box, Liam appeared, taking it from her with ease. "Wouldn't want you hurting those pretty little hands," he said, voice low and amused. As he leaned closer, Emily caught the faint scent of leather, musk, something wild. Her heart stuttered. She stepped back quickly, but not before noticing the way Liam's eyes dropped boldly to the soft swell of her chest. Her skin flushed under his gaze. At night, Emily lay awake, twisting in the sheets. It wasn't Richard's face that haunted her dreams anymore. It was Liam's smirk, Liam's rough, calloused fingers, the burning look in his eyes when he thought she wasn't watching. Guilt gnawed at her. But so did something darker, hotter, curling low in her belly. Liam was a danger, a temptation, a flame dancing just close enough to singe. And Emily, for all her fear, was stepping closer without even realizing. Part 9, The Fall. It started with a drink. One evening, while Richard was away again, Liam found Emily alone in the dim kitchen. He held out a glass, whiskey, rich and golden. "One drink won't hurt," he said with a smirk. Emily hesitated, then took the glass. The whiskey burned down her throat. They sat at the worn wooden table, close enough that Emily could feel the heat radiating off Liam's body. He talked easy, teasing stories about his travels, his rough laughter filling the kitchen like warm smoke. Emily laughed too, the sound surprising herself. It had been so long since she had felt light. At some point, Liam reached across the table, brushing a crumb from her lip. The touch was feather-light, but Emily froze. His fingers lingered a heartbeat too long, and when she looked up, she found Liam's eyes locked on hers, dark, burning, hungry. "You're too beautiful for this place," he murmured. Too beautiful to be left alone. Emily's breath hitched. I belong here," she whispered, but the words felt brittle even to her own ears. Liam leaned closer, so close she could smell the whiskey on his breath, feel the heat of his skin. "No, Emily, you deserve more." His hand slid along her cheek, tilting her face up. Their mouths were only inches apart. Emily's heart pounded wildly, her body aching, confused, desperate. "Tell me to stop," Liam whispered, his voice raw, urgent. Emily opened her mouth, but no sound came. And then Liam kissed her. It was nothing like Richard's kisses. Liam's kiss was fire. Wild, reckless, devouring. Emily stiffened for a second, then melted, the last shreds of her resistance crumbling into ash. Her hands fisted in Liam's jacket, pulling him closer. He growled low in his throat, lifting her effortlessly onto the table, his hands roaming her body like he had every right to claim it. That night in the dark, trembling kitchen, Emily fell. Not just her body, her heart, her soul, her last defenses. And somewhere deep inside, a part of her already knew there would be no going back. Part 10. Chains of Guilt. It didn't stop after that night. It should have, Emily knew it should have, but something inside her, wild, reckless, starved, had already snapped, and Liam... Liam was always there, waiting, tempting, teasing. It started with stolen kisses behind closed doors, a lingering brush of hands in the hallway, a quick, desperate embrace in the darkened laundry room. Emily found herself seeking him out, even when she hated herself for it. The fear of getting caught throbbed in her veins, but the thrill was addictive, a drug she couldn't refuse. One afternoon, hidden between the towering hedges in the garden, Liam pressed her against the rough bark of a tree, his mouth devouring hers, her hands fisted in his shirt, her body arching helplessly into his. At night, she still crawled into bed alone, pretending she could sleep, pretending she could forget. But her skin burned. Her lips tingled, her body ached for him, and worse, so did something deeper. Each encounter left her more hollow inside, more trapped. She couldn't look Richard in the eye anymore. Couldn't meet her own reflection, but still, when Liam crooked a finger at her, smirked that devilish smirk, Emily followed, every single time. And deep down, a part of her understood. She was no longer falling. She was already lost. Want to know what happens next in The Forbidden Love between father and son? If you're craving more of Richard and Emily's intense chemistry, wondering what secrets the old castle holds, or dying to see if their love can defy all odds, hit like, drop a comment with your theories, and subscribe plus turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support fuels this story. Team Richard or Team Emily? Let's debate below.